down here, this is slightly connected with the last one. This is called Drawing Four Horizons Across East Anglia. You've got a panel of Xerox copies of the Ordnance Survey map, and on that I have linked up all the points that are 2 foot, 5 foot, 7 foot and 9 foot above sea level, and you've got 4 different coloured lines, just like contours. So if you walked along one of these contours, you would not change your altitude, but you would change your direction. That is the opposite of what you see if you walked in a straight line across the countryside. That would be denoted by a piece of string. So it really is drawing 4 horizons, 4 types of horizons. Because it's East Anglia, those are the visual horizons, what you see, very flat. And that is the map horizon when you look down. This is about 2 years old. It was done after those 3 over there. Basically, it is a painting of Letchworth. Now, Letchworth Gardens suburb was designed so that you wouldn't need any signs. Every road has a different set of trees, so they imported hundreds and hundreds of different types of trees. For example, this one in the front are limes. These are just a schematic representation of that, and this is the road section that was done before, in fact, the road was built. And we have 6 road sections all laid out in plan. Now, I don't know if you can see very well, but this little box here is the original version of this, a very small version. And that is exactly the same, better done, of course, better paintwork. But it's an interesting concept that all you have to do is walk along a road, look up, see the tree, recognise what it is, and you know where you are. Also, of course, it took about 40 years to grow. I don't know whether it really works, whether people do in fact locate themselves in Letchworth because of the trees, but it's just a nice thing to think about. This piece was started about a year ago and was finished in February. Last summer I got a grant from Southern Arts region of the Arts Council to do a piece of work. They didn't tie me to anything in particular, but this was my idea. But since then it's been radically changed. The first idea was to take 6 places in the Southern Arts region. This here is a map of the region there, and these are 6 places. They would have been, if it had been finished, Reading, Aldershot, Southsea, Swindon, Chipping Norton and Devizes. I picked these places because I have a personal link with all 6 of them. I then started by getting a postcard of an old postcard somewhere in the 1910s, 20s period, coloured, hand-coloured some of them, stuck that on, and then was going to do a copy of each one, and then go to this place and photograph through the seasons. So this with Reading, which is just the start of it, in fact, you have a coloured postcard here of Forbury Gardens and the Lion Monument in Reading, and then a copy of that, oil painting copy. Under here you have a summer photograph of that position, and it would have gone on right down here with different images of the same place. You would have had a snow scene, a scene in the autumn, etc. Then over here you've got a figure, which is the thing that links me to Reading. There would have been 6 figures running right along the bottom here, all different people who link you with the place. I've got a description of all that, what I've just told you here, so that you would know that. Unfortunately, the painting was going a bit wrong, and I had a break. I went to Berlin between the 1st and 10th, which is written there, and the experience radically altered my ideas about painting. Not the way to paint, but the images you paint. And I found that I just couldn't carry on. I found that the painting had died and the ideas had died. However, I wanted to do a painting of the plan of the Berlin Wall, and I thought I'd just combine it and put it on here. So this bit here is the Berlin Wall plan section looking down with the gaps where the checkpoints are. And it's just self-explanatory. This is the west region here, and that's the east. In fact, this doesn't really give you an impression of the Berlin Wall, because when you're in the west, you're trapped, you're on an island. It isn't the edge of the Western world at all. You're in fact in the Eastern world, and you are on an island. And there is the wall in front of you, and the wall extends right round you and behind you, all patrolled. I'm probably going to do some more work involved with Berlin and the Berlin Wall soon. This is a very strange painting. It doesn't really fit in with the work here. Done a year and a half, 2 years ago. It is self-explanatory if you look at it long enough. It's split into 5 sections, and each one is a pastiche of 5 of my favourite painters I admire and I like. I'll just run through them. Dave Inshaw, Tom Phillips, David Hockney, Richard Hamilton, Patrick Caulfield. Now, none of these have painted a hedge in this way, so it is not a copy, but some of them have painted hedges before. Dave Inshaw, who I know quite well and seen a lot of his work, has actually painted hedges. Not this particular hedge, but hedges. So I could get a very good impression of how he would have done it. The same with Patrick Caulfield and David Hockney. So it really was a question of trying to trap their idea of a hedge and put it down. Now the painting is called Hedge Against Inflation, which is a rather bad pun. It's all to do with the fact they're famous and they sell their paintings for a lot of money, and it is a hedge against inflation. The Tom Phillips, this one here, just this writing, 6 fragments of English hedge and the date, only applies to this section. Some people have thought that it applies to the whole thing. That's not true. There are 5 sections. This 6 fragments means this, which is the 6 ways of looking at that particular hedge. Tom Phillips, I don't know of him painting a hedge. He's painted the Berlin Wall in 6 ways, but not any hedges. David Hockney, quite easy to do because he has done a lot of foliage, and he's got a very distinctive brushstroke. Richard Hamilton, this is based on his Marilyn series, which is a painting of several paintings, in fact, of Marilyn Monroe running out of the sea, and photographs, and they're scrawled out and they've got good. And this is a direct copy, apart from the fact that I've just put in images of hedges behind, so the surrounds are correct. This is a copy of a cross exactly, and this stain is exactly the same, and this Kodak word up here is exactly the same. Patrick Caulfield, another easy one really, because all you have to do is paint it, surround it with black lines, and there it is. This has got a link with the Berlin Wall painting. When I decided that I was going to take up this grant from the Southern Arts region, I decided to make a map, a soft map, it's made of canvas, and plot on it all my journeys, which were to be involved with the painting, because I had to keep visiting these places, like Chipping Norton up here. Then I'd have to go there obviously and photograph it. So I started doing this, so this painting isn't finished. Down here you've got the length of the journey. It starts in July the 1st and will end the last day in June over here. The cottons are the, in fact, length of the journey, and it tells you what the method of transport was. It a van, a bus, a train, etc. On the map itself are the cottons in different colours to denote the different months. And for example, there's July, which is the orange ones, which is all these. There's nothing on the map apart from a grid section for location purposes, and it is building up. I live at the moment off here, which is Stroud, and that means, of course, there are a lot of journeys coming in from Stroud. When I started it, I was living in Bristol, so that's why there's journeys here. This is the rail line between Bristol through Swindon, which was one of the places I was painting, through here to Reading, another place I was painting, and then on. So when it's finished, it will lay down where the A4 is, where the M4 is, where the rail network is, etc., and all the places I was visiting at the time. Another piece of work to do with Letchworth. The top Xerox copy is Pixmore Way in Letchworth Garden City, and that was a photograph taken in 1922, just after it had been built. Therefore, no trees. Well, the trees are there, but they haven't grown, of course. This is a very bad photograph of a piece of work I did. It's grey, it's black and white, but it's, because it's a coloured photograph, it's coming out yellow. And that is a copy, a large copy of that photograph. Now here, this is a photograph as it is now. I cycled there, set the camera up in the same position and photographed it. And of course, all the trees have grown. This is a link with various pieces of work through a time sequence, really. You've gone from 1922 to Pixmore Way in 1974. And some things haven't changed. The doorways, of course, are exactly the same, different colours, but the same doorways. The trees have grown, the grass has grown and everything, but it's still approximately the same. And these are 4 sexual pieces of work. They're collages, well, 3 of them are collages, these 3 here, and there's one over here, which we'll talk about in a moment, is black and white drawing pencil. They're not supposed to be linked, 1, 2, 3. That is just the crush of space in this gallery. I just had to hang one above the others. They could be in a line, they could be apart. They were done in sequence, one after another, last summer. This one here, at the top, is every pier in England and Wales labelled, stuck on a pin and put on the map. Then you've got 2 postcards of piers and a woman who very conveniently fits into the map. It took some time to get a woman who would, leafing through girly magazines, etc. A combination of 2 things, really. Piers, which was in my work at that time, isn't anymore. I'll show you some of those in a moment. And the sexual thing. Down here, the same idea, but using zips and perspective. 2 things that were in my work as well. You see, I haven't really been handling the figure very much. Much more to do with landscape in a very general way, not a pretty landscape, Constable way, of course. So I wanted to bring the figure in hard. There is also a personal thing about these pieces of work, a personal sexual hang-up of mine. This is a lady, photograph stuck on Xerox radiograph of the genital tract, and it is labelled, just quite simple, bits of the body: oviduct, cervix, ovary, uterus, vulva, vagina. Big vagina because all 4 of them are called vagina something. Vagina piers, vagina zip. Just a couple of other words on it. Larry Rivers is there because too many people were saying, you've just done Larry Rivers. Have you seen Larry Rivers' work? Because he uses nude ladies painting and labelled. He uses labels in different languages, of course. Another word here, vanishing point, self-explanatory, and vanishing off the piece of work. This one, 4 Xeroxes of 4 medical diagrams of the genital tract, external genital tract, and 4 photographs from the same magazines of the same area, vagina. In the centre, 3 photographs, which is the link between the girls and my work. Three very deep space vanishing point perspectives. Top one, the mirror box, which you've just seen. This just a postcard of Eastern Road in Romford. This is a Xerox of a painting I did some time ago. Labels are the same as here: vagina, external urethral orifice, etc., etc. Labelled on the houses, get some sort of paradox going there. Down here and here I've got the labels crossed out, and I've used the labels it would have been over there. So you've got back fence, white lines, back garden, etc., etc. There. Now if we come over here and see this one, this was done after those, more sophisticated because there's no copy of an actual photograph. This is a drawing of a woman. There is just a piece taken out, a Xerox copy, and just a piece, a very small part here, of the breasts. This is called vagina perspective, so I'll just read you this here. Perspective, a quasi-mathematical system for the representation of three-dimensional objects in spatial recession on a two-dimensional surface, i.e. for the creation of an independent pictorial space as a microcosm of nature. That is just a straight definition of perspective. The cottons give you the horizon line and the vanishing point there, same vanishing point, vagina, as in those. The hedge system here comes from the Crinkle Crankle Alley hedge in Chatsworth, which I've done a large painting of, which isn't in this show. So there's the link between the girl, perspective and alley hedges, and nudes. I can't really claim that I treat a nude woman as a hedge, but that is the claim of this piece of work. Oh, and just a label here: vagina, labium maximus, labium minimus, and topiary. This painting last year, that's quite recent, and the whole idea behind the painting I've used. Now the first thing I can do is show you a black and white photograph, which is what this comes from. I don't know if you can come in on that. That's splendid. That's it. This comes from a magazine, a book, sorry, and it's divided in strips. And then I've blown up the scale, of course. And down the side it tells you exactly how it was done, and if I just explain that. The photograph is divided into 97 strips. The strips follow the angle of the sun, which is 47 degrees, going that way. Then the photograph is covered up and just a strip left, so that all I can see is one long thin area of black and white. I can't even tell what is a tree, what is the sky, what is a girl's hat, because it's such a small area. I mean, this is quite a large area to paint on, but when of course it's a black and white photograph which is this small, then it's very tiny indeed. So then I started. I put a registering system all around the outside so that I knew where I was on the photograph, and those are in colours. They're the 17 different colours I used in the painting. I used a limited palette, and I've listed those for reference purposes right along the bottom there. Now I was having to transfer black and white into colour, and that involves some sort of memory. A tree trunk that is dark is quite easy, so therefore the registration problem isn't there. It jumps slightly sideways, of course, going all the way up, but the colour is pretty consistent right through. Now with a light sky it's not so easy, so that's why there's a lot of jumping across. When I finished the painting, all I could see was lots of strips of paper. So I'd never seen it as a final object. Wasn't aware of any deep space because all I was aware of was abstract colour patterns. And then it was just a process, rip off the paper and there it is, and no alteration. I mean, you have to resist that sort of thing because you could just tart up the painting until it all works together. But I was very happy with it. It wasn't how I imagined what was going to happen, which was a lot more jumping across and almost destroying the image. There is just a quote here from the same book, which is about that. It's a very strange quote indeed. It's about the English country road and the way it is almost better than anywhere else in Britain. I'll just read you a quick bit of that. The English country road is something apart and unique. Its hedges anchor it to the fields that surround it. It is national, it is lovely. To walk along it between April and June is to witness a very special miracle of spring, wrought only for the inhabitants of England. Nowhere is there so tender, so lovely a green as in those quick-set hedges, those various bordering trees, that flower-decked hedge bank, that wayside strip of grass waste. I just put that in because it's got something to do with the way the photograph was done. It was from a book called Town and Countryside by Thomas Sharp. Now from the same book comes another black and white photograph, which is the idea behind this piece of work. Done in pencil, in the same way as that. Divided into strips, working the other way because the sun is coming from right to left. Dated around the outside when the strips were done, and this is called A Country Road. Same book. Says underneath, the photograph was sectioned and copied systematically, each strip being covered when completed. Each strip refers only to the corresponding one in the photograph and not to its neighbour. As I say, these were done a year ago, and I dropped the idea of the strip for about 6 months. But I found my work was not progressing. So last autumn I decided to do a larger one, and this here is some of the groundwork for the painting we'll see in a moment. If you are covering up a photograph, then you have pieces of paper each side, and on those pieces of paper you can work out a colour system. And these are just the greys. This is the grey section here and the colour system there to give you a reference. Right. I'll now move on to this large painting here. This is one of the photographs used in this large painting. And I'll just show you the other one. There we are. Just a few words about the whole painting. It is 6 squares, as you can see, laid out on the wall. And over here are all the different ways you can put 6 squares together to form a cube. Now, the one that I've used on this wall is that one there. These are photographic copies of this big painting set up in different ways. It works on a hinge system, so there's a hinge. You can get the whole thing, fold it round, and it turns into a cube. That's the structure behind it. Now, down here we have 2 canvases, which are copies of those 2 photographs I showed you. Now, they're using the same systematic way of working, the strip method of working, which I used on the other 2 paintings. There's no transferring of black and white to colour, so I kept this one black and white and that one colour, just a straightforward copying, using the same colour system around the outside, the same colour registration around the outside, 2 flags to denote where they are, and some writing to tell you where it is there. Now, I was getting very hung up on the south coast, the southern art region, so I wanted to make a change. I picked on 2 places that were a million miles away from that, one of which is Petrograd, just before the revolution, 6 months before the revolution, and Peking, both of them communist countries, very different sort of communist countries. Now, that also involves 2 different places, incredibly different, one of which is a revolutionary situation with fighting in the streets, and people getting killed. It is upside down, of course, but as it folds you can see it each way. But I think you can see how the people are rushing around across there. This was in 1917, and it was a big demonstration about Kerensky's provisional government and trying to bring it down. Now, this was also the scene of revolutionary activity. It's the big square, Tiananmen, which is the place where they take the reviews, where Chairman Mao stands over here and takes the reviews, and they've got big slogans. But it's very peaceful. It is the south of England type thing again. The pretty colours, the blue cyclists, and there is a strange link between those two, the movement and the figures that are roughly the same size. There's two slogans on there which read, "Long live the People's Republic of China," and "Long live the great unity of the world's people." The painting should be read as a whole, as a cube, and it could be hinged so that you could put it together. Although, as I said, that isn't important. The important thing is you know that it's a cube and you can play with it. I have done paintings before that are hinged. Over on the corner here we have a sea which comes from the landscape, and I don't know if we can get right round, but here are some piers. Lovely. Right, I'll take one out so we can look at it. There, we should be able to come in close on that. Bognor. Unfortunately nearly gone, the whole end section's been knocked down. There we are. Well, the idea comes from toothbrushes, all hanging up. Piers are like toothbrushes when you think about it. They've got all the stanchions they stand on, which are the brush part, and they extend back to the land. The whole painting is called 13 South Coast Piers, and that involves 13 South Coast piers from west to east. So if you can imagine, this bar represents the south coast of England, and these are the piers hanging off it. You've got it. The pier over here is Teignmouth, and the pier on the right over here, which is to the furthest east, is Hastings. And then we run across, which you might better recognise, Hastings, Eastbourne, a couple of Brightons, Worthing, Bognor, Southsea, and right across. I cycled 250 miles to get all these piers in. Not painting them on the spot, just photographing and drawing. Piers. Now, I've got some theories about these. The fact that pier is on the edge of your world and you like to walk out on it. They have no purpose, the pier, when you think about it. It was a jetty in the Victorian times. They did start as jetties, and people used to walk out and get on a boat. But nowadays they're just pleasure piers and people walk up and down. True that there are slot machines and fun fairs, etc. on the end, but they're basically a platform for walking down and viewing and looking back on your world. Could be phallic symbols, although, as I said, I'm not happy about that. Right, if over here I move this E, we have the same subject, but done in a map form. They all come off, could be moved around. There. Ordnance Survey map version of the pier. That's Hastings on the end. There are 11 in this one, rather than 13. And there we are. This tells you at the top where they are, and using exactly the same colour. This is the land forest green, which I'd used before, an outline edge, and black writing. It's blown up very large, so you've got sections of words. This is Portsmouth, for example, which is coming across Portsmouth Harbour, but I've just taken out the centre section. Right. Now this is not going to be easy to see. The It's a test strip. If you remember the test strip that I did just before I did the big cube, trying out different colours to fit in. This is the same thing but laid out flat. You've got a periscope mirror there, so you can look in through there and look straight down and out here, and you've got holes right through the pieces of paper. It's a process of laying a piece of paper over a photograph, trying out the colour, and then copying it onto the painting. It's like a box of slides, really. Just a memory for me on how to do it. Then right at the bottom it just tells you colour comparisons for Letchworth Henningham painting, June, October 74. More obsessions with recording what I'm doing. This is 5 pieces of work, 5 different photographs of pieces of work, which if you come in on and take a close up, here we have another street scene, inevitable. The deep space perspective, there are cottons running through this, which are giving you the vanishing points. Pixmore Way again, Letchworth. Down here, a photograph of a street in Bristol, where I was a student. This turned into another painting which isn't in this show. The Crinkle Crankle Alley Hedge at Chatsworth. There is a big painting of this, about 8 foot high. That was done in the same sequence of strip painting, but also, of course, used in the vagina perspective drawing of the lady. Another photograph of Reading, another place where I was a student. Not the same 1930s housing, much earlier than that. Reading was built till 1860s. It was built on the money of a biscuit factory there, Huntley Palmers. And you've got these new old houses there. We'll drop just a bit further. Another deep space perspective, linear perspective, vanishing point of a country garden. I don't know where that is. I just cut it out of a magazine because it fitted in well. If you can see this big piece of work over here, I'll take that letter away. Yeah. Like a lot of my other work, it relies on a fixed position to view it correctly. But this is one way of looking at it. It's a cube with wires. There, one wire. And strung together, very thin. It is made of wood, in fact, covered with a mirror foil. So a very, very synthetic object. But strung inside are 2 paintings. There's one painting here, which is now, you're seeing it in a very distorted way because you're viewing it from almost completely the wrong direction. And this is a painting of a park with a fountain. And just behind that, over there, is a sheet of perspex. That's it, with a wheelchair painted on it. You're seeing the back of that from that position. You're now seeing the wheelchair from the position that it was designed. The chair itself has got no distortion, or very little distortion. It is looking correct, and hopefully it looks as though it's sitting on the background, which is now looking like a square, and you can probably see the fountain to the right of the image, and the water, then the pavement, and then the wheelchair in front. But it isn't absolutely necessary, of course, to look at it from that position. You do have the whole total image of a cube made of what looks like tubular chromium, very like a pier perhaps, or a wheelchair. Inside are trapped the 2 images. The idea came from a ballet I saw where they did in fact use a wheelchair in the ballet and used it isolated in a space frame, very like this. So the wheelchair is an isolated object from its background.